Hey everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beanon, joined as always by the Fantasy Master Lothario, the mustachioed man of mystery. How you doing, Gray?
Oh man, I'm stressed, bro. I'm really stressed. The bots got me good, man. The bots have attacked Razzball and they have taken down my spirit. they've, they've crushed my spirit, man. I'm struggling. It was like a whole weekend of just like nonstop, like playing whack-a-mole with like bots. I didn't realize so many people in France were interested in fantasy baseball.
They need that info, man. They need it. Need it,
Ah,
Gray.
you have a I have an injury. I have an injury to Orlando Arcia. I am looking at Vaughn Grissom.
I don't know if that's French or what accent you were going for there, really, if I'm being honest.
Parlez-vous français, Orlando Arcia? How do you say in English? I have big problems with waivers. I don't
No
do
fab
it.
left.
According to this company we hired to kill the bots that are infecting the site, they were like, "Do your number one the number one IP address coming to your site is from France? Does that sound right?" I'm like, "No, I don't think it does." To be honest, I really don't think our number one reader is in France.
I think like 90% live is somewhere in the Midwest, like 8% on the East Coast, and then there's like Gray, which is probably another 2% by himself.
Yeah, man. I mean, I know Cougs has
In
cousins in
Korea,
France.
you can't forget Korea.
Oh
We're
yeah.
huge there.
Well, we're the number one podcast in Korea.
Yeah. I mean, number one sports podcast. Yeah, for sure.
Actually, we may no longer be because I blocked all other countries except the U.S.
Oh, come on, Gray. You can't help. Come on. You even got Korean names right. I mean,
Rasbol has become very xenophobic. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I blocked everyone outside of the continental U.S.
Dodgers games must be fun then.
Yeah. No, actually we went to Cougs and I went to the Dodger game on Saturday, and we got there on time, but we went to get hot dogs before we went to our seats, and we missed the first three innings because of the pitch clock. It was like, wow, like I thought, like the line wasn't that long. There was only like three people in front of us. Like the pitch clock was so fast, dude. Like it was also a 1-0 game into the ninth inning, which we left before the ninth inning. And then the Dodgers came back and won.
So you were there for like 25 minutes. Like you were
Literally,
there for an episode of Seinfeld.
we literally looked at, yeah. We were there. Honestly, we were there for an episode of CSI. 42 minutes. It was like, okay. I dropped my sunglasses like David Caruso. We sat in the seat. I had pulled my sunglasses off, and CSI was over, and we were out of the stadium. I barely finished my hot dog. That's how fast we were there. It was like, okay.
So this is another conspiracy theory of mine that I'm just going to throw out here because we're in the nonsense portion here. If ballparks and teams lose too much revenue because games are too short, we will see that pitch clock either gone or extended by like double. Like it's
Yeah.
got to happen
Well,
because of the
honestly,
money.
I know. No, you may not be wrong because like I was thinking of this
The
too. Like
ads too. Like how many ads are running now? How many fewer ads?
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, if you think about like even like commercial breaks, it was like they went from like all these commercial breaks and like having time when like the pitcher went over to like scratch his balls
Like
and
put
like
something up in the corner.
pick up like the rosin bag and juggle it around. And
Viagra, help your balls, juggle your balls.
they do like Viagra up in the corner of the screen. For any of that. They're literally like they barely have time to announce the game. It's so fast.
Manoa's like running a sprint at this point, like in between pitches to get his pitch off. Like,
I know. Yeah, no, I was thinking that too. Like you see it now with like beer sales at like stadiums. They're like, yeah, I mean, if you're gonna drink on your way back to the car in the parking lot, then you gotta do what you gotta do. Like, sell beer. Like, I'm sorry, if you want to drink a couple beers on the way back to the parking lot, then so be it. Like, what do you need to say, really? It was never about like your safety. It was always about like, well, it was 4 hours before the 7th inning, so we were able to sell enough beer.
We had enough revenue at that point.
Right.
Good.
Yeah, it was always about the revenue.
You ate lunch, you ate dinner, you had a snack.
Nothing to do with safety ever. It was like, yeah, I don't know. Hire an Uber. We're selling you beer.
You don't have enough time to get drunk during the game anymore unless you're like find a liquor stand somewhere.
Yeah, seriously. Okay.
Anyway, all right. Let's get into the news. We've rambled on. All right. Exciting stuff. Call-ups. Early call-ups. Bretty Baty's up. He's coming up for the Mets. 89 games at Double-A last year. He had 19 home runs, 2 stolen bases. He had 312, 406, 554. He saw 6 games at Triple-A, 11 games at the major league level. Those stats really aren't worth bringing up. Is he your top rookie ad among the guys that are available right now?
Yeah, yeah. As of right this second, yeah, totally. Yeah, I think so. So I've mixed feelings about Bretty Baty. I have a lot of good feelings. I'm excited he's up. In Donkey and I in our main event league, we drafted Bretty Baty, and in the first week of the season we dropped him. So that was bad. So that was not good. We dropped him for like a random middle reliever too. It was like, oh man,
Joe Jimenez or something.
Yeah, I think next year we need to have a third person on this team, this team of managers. But I do have him. I have him in Tout Wars, which is NL only 12 team. I drafted him. I held him on my bench for the last 3 weeks. I'm actually in first place right now in Tout Wars, so wish me luck there. But yeah, so I have him in Tout Wars. I have him. I believe I have him in a 15. Oh, I got him in a 12-team mixed league in labor. So I got him in a 12-team mixed league. I have him in a 12-team NL only, and I would pick him up everywhere. That's my long way of saying I would pick him up in literally every league. I think he could be the guy. Like, if you look at his numbers, like he doesn't have as much speed as Jordan Walker. Just to compare apples to apples, to compare rookie third baseman to rookie third baseman. I think Jordan Walker is still better. I think Jordan Walker has like 15 steal speed. He's got as much, if not more, power. Jordan Walker's average might be a little bit lower than Bretty Baty. Bretty Baty has a little bit better contact. So I like Bretty Baty a lot, though. I just think that I don't know if Buck Showalter is necessarily going to just like completely stop playing Eduardo Escobar completely. Like, I don't see that, to be honest. And Bretty Baty's a lefty, so that gives him an easy platoon. Now, Bretty Baty going out, like being benched versus lefties, isn't really that big of a deal because there's not as many lefties there, obviously. And there's also like lefty versus lefty matchups aren't good anyway. So if Buck Showalter is going to play the old school manager game and bench Bretty Baty, then I think it's fine. I think that's still, he's still rosterable in like every single shadow league. It doesn't matter that he's going to get benched against lefties. So, but I think he will. So that's going to limit his upside to a certain extent for like counting stats. So like if I had to say off the top of my head his projections, I'd probably put him at like 22 to 25 homers, 2 60 plus average because he, like I said, he does have good contact and next to no speed. Like he stole 2 bags in AAA. And with the pitch clock and with the limited pickoff moves, maybe he has like a little bit of, maybe he has like 5 steals, like a handful of steals, but he doesn't really have real speed. So I like Bretty Baty. I just think his upside, because there's not real speed there, and he's probably getting platooned out against lefties. I think his upside might be a little bit more limited than people are giving him credit for. I don't think he's like gonna be a 30 plus homer guy this season. Maybe next year, possibly. I don't know. I like Bretty Baty a lot though. Like I said, I have him even in a 12-team mixed league. Like I would pick him up in literally every league. So I do like him. I'm just trying to like cool the jets a little bit. I think his upside might be a little bit limited.
Yeah, if you're not hitting the middle of a lineup and you're not stealing bases, it can be hard to provide, just the top end, fantasy value goodness. And especially if you're platooning, like you mentioned, I would hope they get to a point where he's not platooning. Just like if you're going to bring him up, you're going to put the service time on him. Just like let him go, let him see it, and let's go. I mean, sure. I mean, you can put Eduardo Escobar in there, I suppose, and let him face lefties. But again, like what do you really need out of Eduardo Escobar? Let him do that with Daniel Vogelback out of the DH. Let Bretty Baty play. Like that's how it should be. Hopefully, Baty hits the ground running, and that's kind of what they do with him. I mean, he's already got 5 home runs and 2 stolen bases in 9 games this year in AAA. This Gray, so I mean, he's clearly ready. I mean, he like as far as there's nothing left to prove at the AAA level for him. It's just how's it gonna translate? He's always walked at a good rate, so I think he's probably a little bit safer in the if it's an OBP league than an average. But I still think, like you said, 250, 260 still seems pretty reasonable and with potential for it to get, for that to be higher if he just kind of hits the ground and gets going right off the bat.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds reasonable. I mean, there is upside here. I mean, he could be a 32 homer guy this year and just have like as much power as he was showing in the minor leagues. This year he comes up and he shows that in the majors, and before you know it, he's hitting right behind Alonso, and he's an everyday guy because he's hitting everything. That possibility is out there. I just don't think that's like, the 100%, like that's not a guarantee. I mean, that's just like, a possible upside, maybe in the best case scenario type way.
Right. I think like the floor is somewhere in like the Ryan McMahon area. Like, well, I guess the floor is him going back to the minors potentially, but like assuming he stays up, like he's like a Ryan McMahon. If it's the floor with potential to move up to like I'd say like a Bregman, like just better counting stats, a few more home runs.
Yeah. Bregman's actually a good comp. I think that's probably pretty good. I think Bregman is like 25 to 27 homer, 270 average, not a ton of speed. Yeah. I mean that could be Bretty Baty this year, potentially.
I think potentially he can put up very similar numbers. If he can just work his way into the middle of that lineup, that may take a little bit of time. So in the end, it may take you a little bit for him to get to that value, but I think he can get there. Next up is Zach Neto. He's coming up for the Angels. He only has 44 games in the minors, Gray. He has 8 home runs, 8 stolen bases over those 40 games. I mean, is this another must pick up?
Yeah, so this was shocking for me to see him get Neto, to see him get called up. That was shocking because he's like barely, what's he, 12 years old? He's so young. I mean, he's like, he's not that young. I guess he was
he came out of college.
He was a college player. So yeah, I mean, still though, in terms of minor league experience, he's like barely a year there, which is, pretty rare nowadays. I don't hate that move. I like it from the Angels perspective and from a fantasy perspective. I think probably in a real world baseball scenario type situation, I think the Angels are like, if we have any chance of doing anything with Otani, we have to do it right now. It's like literally the only chance we have because he's probably out the door at the end of the year. So if he's not out the door, it's only because we've done something like in the playoffs and have, maybe even gotten to a World Series. So they're bringing up Neto in order to try and make, maybe Otani seem like, oh, okay, they're going for it. They're doing something. At least they're doing something. So anyway, but from a fantasy perspective, I mean, I went pretty hard to get after Neto in most of my leagues. And I mean, that really was because it was contingent on the fact that I've lost O'Neal Cruz in literally every league. I had so many shares of O'Neal Cruz. So because O'Neal Cruz was gone, I was like, well, Neto's getting called up. They're not calling him up unless he like flames out, which seems totally unlikely because like one of his number one attributes is his hit tool. Like he's a 280 plus hitter. So the fact that he makes great contact, I don't think he's flaming out. I don't think he's going to end up, getting sent back to the minors unless he really struggles. And I guess that possibility is out there, but hopefully that doesn't happen. So I think the fact that they called him up, the fact that in his second game with the Angels, he was already batting leadoff. So someone up top, whether it was Perry or Artie, someone said to Nevin, like, hey, we're calling this guy up. Put him at leadoff. We're not playing around, man. Like this is like we got to do something here. So the fact that they hit him at leadoff in his second game, I mean, it shows really good confidence in him. So I mean, it's early. We'll see. There a lot could happen, but I really like him. Like I said, I went after him in every league. I bid really high for Fab. Out of 1,000, I bid over $200 for Neto. He's my top guy who I've bid on so far this year. But that was really a needs thing. Like I didn't need some other people. I needed him. So because of the O'Neal Cruz situation. So from a fantasy perspective, it looks like he's got great speed and great hit tool and some decent power. I think probably the worst case scenario is like maybe 5 to 7 homers and 270 average and 15 to 20 bags. So, like a 715 or 720, 270 as a leadoff guy. So there's going to be a ton of runs hitting in front of Otani and Trout. Yeah, I mean, it's basically like what you were hoping to get from Tommy Edman when you drafted him. So that's like essentially a top 75 overall draft pick if you were drafting today. So that's pretty valuable. Of course, he's a rookie, so things could happen. He could flame out, and it could end up into nothing. But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. I feel like his best case scenario. So I've said his worst case. I think his best case scenario is probably 12 to 15 homers, 25 steals, 280 plus average hitting at leadoff for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think there's enough upside here, and it's really hard to say exactly what his potential is because there's so little information on him outside of college, what he did in college. So you're kind of going off the tools, but again, it's hit tool first. He's always had a good a good contact rate despite, kind of, it's not like a really short compact swing. Like there's moving parts to it, but like it still works for him. So I would expect, this kind of continues until it fails. They're going to give him the leeway to do it. They called him up this early. I think if there was any question in the organization, if he could handle it, like they would have waited. So you're assuming full-time shortstop pretty much for the most, right? Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the people hurt the most are like Drury, Renhefo, Fletcher, I believe, was sent down. So, yeah, I mean, again, I really don't see why you call up a guy like this and not play him every day unless, things go sideways and he just completely like slumps and gets sent down. But if he's up and he's playing. Absolutely. Like you don't hit a guy lead off. Like think about all the stuff that Joe Adell has done in the minor leagues for the Angels. They still haven't called. Like 6 years later, they don't trust Joe Adell, no matter what he does in the minors. This Neto guy, or Neto, he's been there for like 2 weeks. I mean, like Joe Adell must be like, what is going on, man? I've been here for 6 years. This guy comes in and his locker is barely warm and he's already up into the major. So yeah, I mean, I think Neto is. I think, unless something happens, I think he's up for good and he's going to be hitting in a good spot in the lineup. And he's got a great hit tool. Like, you can't really go, like you said, you can't really go off of these sample sizes that he has in the minors, but he was hitting 320 in AA in is only 30 games. He hasn't played much. So, it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, he's hit. He's definitely hit well. And he was in double. He never even went to AAA. So Joe Adell doesn't even know who this guy is. Joe Adell opened up his USA Today this morning. Is like, wait a second. USA Today, this only comes out on weekdays. I didn't know this was going on. How did they call this guy up? I've been here for like 7 years. I hit a home run every at bat. Yeah. So anyway, I like Neto a lot.
Yeah, I do think it's Neto, but I think maybe we should just say Neto anyways, just so that like I can embrace my full 85-year-old man inside me.
I think we just go Neto. We just alternate.
Whatever. Okay.
Yeah, it's like our AC/DC. It's just like Neto.
All right. Next up is Edouard Julien. If you're looking for him in any databases, it's EDOUARD. Julien is with an E on the end. He's called up for the Twins. AA last year, he had 113 games, 17 home runs, 19 stolen bases, 300, 441, 490, 24.6 K rate, a 19.3% walk rate. Where are you at on Julien? Is he kind of the next step down from the Baty Neto grouping?
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, I honestly, because we as in Donkey and I were hurting with the O'Neill Cruz situation, and me in my own leagues I was hurting with the O'Neill Cruz situation. I bid on these shortstops. I bid on these MIs pretty aggressively. So I'm kind of glad I got Neto for $200+ in Fab, because I had bid like $190 on Julien and he ended up going for like $7. So I'm glad I didn't end up with getting Julien for like $190 when I could have had him for like $8. that would have really upset me. So I'm glad it ended up working out okay. But I was very close to overpaying for Julien by like 500,000%. So, I think with Julien, who I actually like a lot, I think Edouard Julien is also really an interesting player. I think the issue and why his fab was so much lower is because okay, so they have Jorge Polanco is somewhere Jorge Polanco, right? I mean, at some point he's probably going to return, assuming, right? I mean, we're assuming at some point Polanco is going to play this year, even though
Yes.
I mean he's been hurting since last like June. So I mean, who knows really with Polanco? But the assumption is he's going to return at some point. And also like there was there was like the Nick Gordon situation. Like there's a lot of guys who the Twins can go to. The Twins have Julian and they've been playing him and they've been hitting him leadoff, which is a good sign. Like going back to the Neto thing, like the fact that the Twins are hitting Julian leadoff, it's a very good sign. I mean, I think he's at least up for, he's up for now and he's hitting. And I mean, he hasn't been hitting that well in the majors yet, but he was hitting in the minors. So, I mean, he was hitting, he was hitting 290, like you said. His hit tool isn't great though. So his in AAA, super small sample size, but his K rate was over 30%. But his K rate was 29% in high A in 2021. So and he's got a 40 grade hit tool. So I do think there is a potential here where he just doesn't hit enough to stay in the majors, at least this go around. Like he might, like he has, which is nice. He does have good power. He's already hit one homer in the majors. But he doesn't really have speed either. So even though he did steal 20 bags in double A or something, 19 bags. So I think I think he's probably a sort of like placeholder versus a guy who you're going to be able to rely on for the whole year. I think there's a chance that he gets sent back down. I think there's a chance that he just completely misses. Like right now, as of the recording of this, he's hitting 111. He's got a super low BABIP, but it's also 5 games, so it's a small sample size. But I think there's a chance here that he hits 210 and maybe 12 to 15 homers. Like this is I'm saying if he stays up and he stays in the lineup, I would put his projections at maybe 12 to 15 homers and a 220 average. So that's not really. I mean, you can't outside of a AL only where everyone's rostered or a 15 team mixed league, you pick them up as a placeholder, but you're looking for other guys. Like when Kyle Farmer comes back from injury, Julian could get replaced. It's not clear that Julian has everyday playing time from now until October.
Yeah, because there's so many ways that the Twins can move their lineup around. It's just kind of what they're doing right now. But Solano can play first and second. You got Kirilloff coming back who can play first outfield. Maybe he DHs and Buxton plays some outfield. You have Gordon who plays second base outfield. You mentioned Farmer already. Jorge Polanco will come back. Gallo's coming back. He plays first base, outfield. There's so many guys who play first base, second base, outfield for them that it could go in any number of ways in regards to who gets moved around. I would say since Julian's already been sent down this year, they've already used the option, so they can just kind of move him up and down as they need him to come in. If he hits right off the bat, great. But I would think this is, like you said, it's a placeholder that maybe works out. If he just hits the ground running, they're like, okay, fine. He's our second baseman, Kyle Farmer. You can go sit on the bench somewhere, and we'll send down, whoever, Kyle Garlick or Nick Gordon or whoever it would be. I guess Gordon would have to be cut at that point. But there's any number of ways he could lose a job fairly quickly, actually. Moving on, Oswald Peraza gets called up. I think last year, there's some interest in him. Last year in AAA, he had 19 home runs, 33 stolen bases. He had 259, 329, 448. I think maybe the bigger thing that, at least for me, because I'm selfish and I have him on a bunch of teams, is this might affect Anthony Volpe's playing time, or potentially Anthony Volpe staying up in the majors, who has 1 home run. He has 7 stolen bases. He's hitting 191, 309, 319, 29% K rate. He is walking at almost a 15% clip, which is, maybe saving him to some extent right now.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know. Like, I don't know. Where do you think he plays? I'll throw it right back to you. Like, you're invested in him. I'm not. Where do you think he plays?
Well, I think Volpe likely stays in. I think Peraza is maybe coming up just to kind of be a utility guy right now. Just because they got Donaldson on the IL, they got Bader, Stanton. I mean, they got all the old guys are already starting to hit the IL. So I think this is just a backup. Peraza can play pretty much anywhere in the infield. So I think Peraza's just right now to back up everybody. He's going to play some shortstop, maybe some third base with LeMahieu.
Right. Yeah, that's what. Okay. So yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but yeah,
no, that's fine.
I agree. I think I like Peraza. I just don't know where he plays because, like, I mean, Bader's coming back soon, right? I don't honestly know what the deal is with Donaldson. Maybe he's out for a while. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't really matter.
Giancarlo, I think, he just is out recently, so he's out for at least a couple weeks. I think, like, Franchi's hitting, which, I mean, that could stop
any day.
Soon. Yeah, any day. I mean, Franchi's not great, but he is hitting right now. I don't know. I mean, I like Peraza. I wish he, I think Peraza's best case scenario for playing time is to get traded to another team, to be honest, because I just don't know where he plays unless, like LeMahieu goes down with an injury, or Glaber or Volpe just completely bottoms out, but they've started the Volpe thing. So I don't think Volpe is going anywhere. And even if he struggles, I don't think Volpe is going anywhere. They have total confidence in Volpe's ability, and well, they should. I mean, I think Volpe is going to be the guy for a long time at shortstop for the Yankees. So I don't think they're gonna call him up and mess with him. Like, they're not gonna mess with his playing time. So I mean, DJ LeMahieu, maybe if he gets an injury, or if Glaber, or if Cabrera bottoms out, or Franchi, but then Bader comes up. I mean, Bader returns. So yeah, I like Peraza. I just don't see real playing time for him.
Yeah, I'm with you completely. I think it's kind of if you're grabbing him, it's because you need that middle infield in a deeper league, and you're just waiting to see, if he gets kind of inserted anywhere. But I don't necessarily think he has playing time right now, other than filling in whenever anybody needs a day off. Like, that's where I think he is. But I'm with you. Like, I'm interested if he gets the job, or if for whatever reason they're like, you know what, Volpe, go back down to AAA and work on the strikeouts, and then we'll bring you back up. But I'm with you. I think they're leaving Volpe where he is. He's taking walks. Like, he's taking the 15% walk rate. Like, he stays OBP over 300. Like, they played Aaron Hicks for 4 years. They can get through a few months of Volpe adjusting. Like, it'll be okay.
Right. I know. Aaron Hicks is still in the starting lineup.
He used to lead off. I mean,
I believe you might have said past tense on him, but he's still present tense.
He's still there.
It's Hicks. It's not Hicked.
All right. Let's talk about a few injuries here, Gray. We talked about some good news this time off the bat. Started on a high note. Now we're going to bring it back down. Brandon Woodruff, subscapular strain of the right shoulder. Yeah. Not undergoing surgery. No timetable. This sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, this was brutal. I mean, I never draft pitching high, but I actually got Woodruff in a league or two. I mean, I can't catch a break, man. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing. I mean, he's out for a while. There's nothing. I'm not a doctor. Even though I've told people in the past I am. No. I mean, I have no idea how long he's out. He's out for a while though, according to everything I've read. So that is what it is. Colin Ray is, I think, the fill-in, at least for now. I bid on him in NL only. I didn't bid on him. I didn't look at him. I wouldn't look at him in a mixed league at this point. I think maybe if he has another good start or two, maybe. But right now, I mean, he's just like, where was it? Was he in Korea? I mean, I don't know. Where was he for like the last 3 years? He was in Japan?
Okay. Well, he was in Japan last year.
Okay.
And then in 2021, he pitched, I think, for the Brewers. And before that, he was also in Japan.
Okay, yeah. So I didn't even know. But yeah, I mean, he looked good in his first start, but it was less than 6 innings, and it means that means nothing. So I guess we'll see. I mean, it's a wait and see at this point. Maybe a streamer in mixed leagues, but yeah, outside of NL only, I can't get involved in Colin Ray right now. And yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, outside of that, I'm not sure what else there is to say. I mean, it stinks on Woodruff, but I don't know. I mean, there's no timetable. I would guess months versus weeks. So yeah, it's not good.
No, it's not. On Ray, real quick, just if you're in a deeper 15-team mixed league, 10-12 team, we're not really dealing with Colin Ray. He did come back with a different pitch mix. He's now throwing a sweeping slider. He ditched the curve, and he's kind of throwing the change only as a show me. So there's at least a pitch mix change to maybe keep an eye out on. But yes, I agree. We're not really interested in Colin Ray. Another one that really hurt me. I mean, I had him like everywhere. Number 1 starting pitcher on the player rater, Jeffrey Springs. Also, can I just mention that I hate the Rays because right now we're recording this Monday. The Boston game was already supposed to start. Like, the Rays still haven't IL'd him. It's just killing me for rosters this week. But Jeff Springs, elbow, gonna miss at least a couple months. Still no timetable on him or whether he's even gonna go undergo surgery or not. It sounds like Taj Bradley's getting the job, or at least we all hope
he got Taj Bradley got recalled. Okay. So yeah, I mean, with Springs, I've been telling people on in the comments on Razzball that you can probably drop him. I mean, it depends on the league, obviously. If it's an AL only league, you wait to IL him. If it's a 15-team mixed league, I guess it depends on how much you need it. But yeah, I mean, I think Springs is done for this year, unfortunately. I would be highly surprised if he came back and was effective, but I guess you never know. Which sucks. I mean, I wrote a sleeper post for him. I also drafted Springs everywhere. I was all in on Jeffrey Springs this year. I thought, he felt like one of the biggest no-brainers of the draft season. So yeah, unfortunately, he's gone. So Taj Bradley, he looked great. I mean, there's like, again, it was like a small sample on, how much he's pitched so far in the majors. It was only 1 start and it was only 5 innings, but he looked great in that 1 start. I mean, he looked like he could be what we thought we were getting from Grayson Rodriguez this year. By the way, Grayson Rodriguez, maybe he starts warming up like an hour earlier, because after the first inning, he's been okay. I don't know. If anyone in the Orioles organization is listening to this, have him throw like 75 warm-up pitches and then bring him into the game. Just throwing that out there. Yeah, I think Taj Bradley's probably pick up in every league. He was going for a lot in my fab leagues. I didn't get him because he was going for hundreds. I think he went for like $300 maybe in like one fab league out of 1,000, obviously. Yeah, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but he went for a lot. I didn't get him. I would totally get him. I would totally pick him up though anywhere if he were available to me. I would pick him up in the shallowest of leagues. Like he could be a top 40 starter. With Springs gone, it's like he has the opportunity. And he also threw a ton. Taj Bradley threw a ton of innings last year, so he should be able to go for the whole year if they need him, and he's effective. So yeah, I mean, I can't imagine any reason to not pick up Taj Bradley in any league.
Yeah, I mean he definitely has the upside. We saw it in the first start, 8 Ks over 5 innings. Walks have been a concern a little bit in the minors, but you take the shot and pick a guy like this up, even if you're not necessarily going to start him right off the bat. If you want to make sure you see a couple of starts in the major league level, whatever it is, however you run your team, that's fine. But you're not going to get a chance at this guy if you wait any longer than picking up right now. As Greg mentioned, people were spending a quarter or more of their budget on him in Fab in our leagues. So that's how it went. I didn't spend that money on him either. So that's where it was. I mean, he's a fastball slider curve guy. That's what he is, and he's pitching for the Rays. Like, how many Rays pitchers do you need to see before you start believing that they know what they're doing and just kind of trust them along the way? Moving on, Joe Ryan, the number 2 starting pitcher on the play radar. He's not hurt, but wanted to talk about him because he's had back-to-back 10K outings. These were not against scrub teams. This was against Houston and at New York, the Yankees. Velo is up slightly on his fastball. He's ditched the curve and the change, and the biggest thing is that he picked up a split-finger fastball. So, rest of season, Gray, where are you at on Joe Ryan? Is he a climber for you?
Yeah, well, Joe Ryan was another guy who I wrote a sleeper post on. So I'm totally in on Joe Ryan. I felt like he was another no-brainer. It was like Jeffrey Springs, Joe Ryan, Brady Singer. So, 1 out of 3 isn't bad.
Get everything right.
One out of 3 is pretty good. I mean, 1 out of 3 is like, that's Hall of Fame. That you're hitting 333. That's Hall of Fame numbers. I mean, sorry, it just is. Yeah, I love Joe Ryan. I mean, I don't know if there's anything more to add other than like what you said. He's pitching extremely well, and I thought he would. Like, the thing with Joe Ryan that I always believe in, and not just Joe Ryan, but any pitcher who can do this. Like, if you have great command, you don't have to do that much more. Like, if you have like a 1.5 walk per 9, all you need is like a 9 K per 9, and you're like golden. If you can get to like a 10 plus K per 9, then you're in the Corbin Burns, Garrett Coles of the world. Like, you're basically an ace. You're on the next level if you're able to get above like a 10 K per 9 and have like a 1.5 walk rate. So yeah, I mean, right now, Joe Ryan's what's his xFIP is 281, and yeah, I mean, so he's been fairly neutral on luck. It looks like maybe a little bit high on homers allowed, a little bit low on BABIP, but these are small sample sizes still. There's not a ton to really glean from this other than he's pitching well, and I liked him coming in, and I totally trust him.
Yeah, I did not see the K bump coming that we've seen from him this year, but other than that, like he's always been. I thought he'd come in and be a very solid pitcher, and I mean he's been better than solid to start the season. So absolutely love what we're seeing. It seems like everything that he's done to up the velocity and add the split finger is working. So until I see otherwise, I mean, it seems like teams they were already like he was already a good pitcher. You add velocity plus another pitch that I mean, for all purposes, looks good. Like it's just going to make him better. So yeah, love Joe Ryan. Probably moving into, I don't know, would you say top 20 pitcher pretty easily right now, Greg?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I'm saying Joe Ryan or
Like
Christian, or Joe Ryan or Christian Javier. I mean, right? I mean, that's kind of where I'm sitting, and I feel like Ryan, because Javier's had some velocity and strikeouts are down. So yeah, I mean, right? I mean, you got to believe. I mean, I totally trust Joe Ryan. I mean, I don't think this is a small like you can't go like you said, Astros and Yankees. He's got a 12 plus K per nine. Like you can't put those numbers up in more than one game unless you're super talented. And I think he's super talented.
All right, Gray. I didn't put this in the notes, but I'm going to make you answer anyways. Would you trade Sandy Alcantara and Alek Manoah? Would you trade both of them for Joe Ryan right now?
Both?
No, not both. Like individually, would you trade Alek Manoah for him, and then would you trade Sandy Alcantara for him?
Here's Sandy Alcantara, and I'm gonna just throw in Manoah because he's awful. just take Manoah. He's like a poison pill, and Manoah's a poison pill at this point. It's just basically like it's like the hot potato. Like I don't want here. You take him. I don't want him. It's free. I would trade Alek Manoah for a guy who doesn't exist. I would say I would take Joe Ryan over both of them. Yeah.
So yeah, I think he's clearly into like the top 15 pitchers and room to move up from there. So I would say definitely trade for him if you're the Joe Ryan and your owner in your league is not buying into this change or didn't even notice that he's changed and just thinks this is off to a nice start. You mentioned Orlando Arcia a little bit earlier. He has the microfracture in the left wrist. He was off to a fairly solid start to the season for Orlando Arcia. 2 home runs, 333, 400, 511, but he's hurt. Most importantly, our boy, Vaughn Grissom, he's back. He's going to get dual eligibility at shortstop. He had 10 games down at AAA where he hit 366, 458, 585 with a homer and 2 stolen bases. It was never the bat. The bat wasn't the issue. It was the glove. Now they don't have any choice because Orlando Arcia is hurt, and they don't want to play a higher Ed Gianza at shortstop either.
Yeah. Actually, Vaughn Grissom was another sleeper of mine. I wrote a bunch of these guys up as sleepers, but yeah, I mean, Grissom was a guy who I loved. I mean, I felt like he could have been like 2020 280 hitter this year if he had full time. I mean, you loved him too. Like we talked about, like our entire shortstop podcast was about Vaughn Grissom before we knew he wasn't getting the job. I mean, we were like, you go back and listen to the shortstop podcast, you'll just hear us talk about Vaughn Grissom for an hour and a half. I think Grissom is, like you said, I mean, he's so good with the bat. I don't know if he's gonna, like, the glove's a worry because, like, if he's, like, I don't think the Braves, I think, realize that, I thought they were like exaggerating a little bit with the glove being such an issue that they weren't going to play him, but obviously they weren't. I think, like we made some jokes that, he wouldn't agree to like a 13-year, $14 million contract, so they sent him down. But I think in reality, the Braves realize that their lineup is so good, they probably don't need Grissom's bat. Like they need a defender more than they need the bat, which is, I mean, that's a legitimate concern. I watched on, what was it, Friday? I think it was Friday, his first game up with the Braves, and he looked awful in the field. He looked really bad. Like he was throwing soft, like he was throwing so soft, like a hard hit ball to him, he would like lob it over to Olsen and it was like Olsen, like the guy, I forget who it was, but the hitter beat out the throw because it was such a lob. It was like, what are you doing, man? And that was like, so then that was, I think, counted as a hit at first, and then they changed it to an error, and then he actually made real errors. It wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't great. He did not look good in his his game, his first start. I didn't see him on Saturday and Sunday, but he only has one error so far as of the recording of this. So, I don't know. I mean, hopefully his bat is so good that he's worth grabbing in all leagues. I think actually I would put him above Julien, even though Julien is got the leadoff spot right now. I think, Vaughn Grissom, I think, is much better than Julien. I think I'd probably put Grissom over Neto if I thought Grissom was actually going to play. I just don't know. Like, if Arcia comes back in a couple weeks, which I'm guessing he does, a microfracture, I don't think that's going to knock him out that long. I wouldn't be surprised if Grissom loses at bats again because they like Arcia's glove.
Yeah, it's definitely possible that he could potentially lose his job at some point. That being said, I am picking up him everywhere he's available. I actually didn't drop him from the teams I drafted him, and like any league that he happened to have been dropped in, which I think was one because I drafted him everywhere else. I went ahead and picked him up because the bat is that good. Second base is kind of gross. Middle infield has just been hit by injury after injury. So my teams are so happy that he is back to fill middle infield or second base and then shortstop eventually. You're right, though. Or Arcia could potentially come back. It sounds like it's at least a month, though, because they're going to wait 2 weeks just to reevaluate, and then he'll have to go on. Even if at that point they clear him, he still has to go on some kind of rehab. So that's probably a week. So looking at like 3 weeks minimum, probably a month because he is older. I wouldn't think they'd necessarily rush him back. I don't know what they do on the defensive side. I mean, it doesn't seem like they really think Adrianza is any better. It's possible that if it's just something that they can't handle, they might bring up Shoemake, who is a glove first, no bat guy, and that could be the answer. Unfortunately, you're right. The Braves have an amazing lineup. Albies is a guy you can't move off second base, and Albies is pretty much like Vaughn Grissom is Albies 4 years ago. Like he can't really stay at shortstop glove wise, but the bat's so good, like they're trying to fit him in somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now Eddie Rosario and Marcell Ozuna could just go to the bench, and Vaughn Grissom go DH because again his bat is better than theirs is at this point, but they're also paying them. So we'll see where that ends up coming. The Braves are saving so much money. I think they could probably eat some Eddie Rosario, Marcell Ozuna time. Corey Seager, another middle infield injury, as we're talking about them. Grade 2 left hamstring. 4 weeks until he's reevaluated next. So Josh Smith takes his place. Not much there outside of only. He's really kind of a glove and maybe a little bit of speed, but just wanted to bring up Corey Seager in the injury front. And I'll go ahead and just also bring up Tim Anderson, who has a knee contusion. He's going to the IL 2 to 4 weeks expected. It sounds like his is less serious than Seager or Arcia's because they're saying 2 to 4 weeks is when he'll be back on the roster, not 2 to 4 weeks, and then we reevaluate. Elvis Andrews becomes full-time at shortstop. He joins the list of middle infield replacement options. Lyndon Souza probably second base, and he's not really even in an AL only. I don't know that he's getting picked up. Any other middle infield replacement options we want to go through, Gray, since middle infield was just, I mean, it's been awful this year.
Yeah, no, it was like I mean, that's also why I put so much on Neto and Julien and Vaughn Grissom. Like I really bid hard on these guys because I lost O'Neal Cruz. Like you mentioned, Seager and Tim Anderson, Arcia. I mean, there's like decimated. Shortstop was so deep, and now it's like it's a mess, man. It's so bad. So I don't know. I'm not sure what to say. Like those guys you mentioned aren't good though. They're not great. I
No.
mean, in my in my super deep leagues, Perdomo has been hitting. Like you mentioned, I mean, Luis Garcia hit a homer on Sunday, I believe it was. So, that's kind of interesting. Maybe if he gets hot, I liked him. Going into last year, so there might be something to Luis Garcia. That's the Nationals, Luis Garcia. The Astros, Luis Garcia is a mess. I don't know what's going on with him. And the Padres, Luis Garcia, I don't know. I don't know if he even exists. I think he's he's just an extra Luis Garcia. It was like Gremlins. One night they fed one of the Luis Garcias after midnight, and then they all like started multiplying. Like, whoa, hey, who fed Luis Garcia after midnight? We just got a new one in San Diego. Yeah, I think also like Taylor Walls I was looking at, but these guys like are really just you gotta play matchups. You gotta look at like either the Hittertron or you have to be like or looking at like if they're in the lineup. Like Brujan is great, but does he ever play? I don't know. Enrique Hernandez does play, but is not great.
But he's
So,
awful.
yeah, so it's like
Gene Segura, same thing.
yeah, Gene Segura. I mean, he's in a great situation. Segura is actually in a great situation if he were to actually hit, but he's not hitting. So yeah, I don't know. These aren't really good options. So that's why like Neto, Julian, Grisham, if you can, those are your best options out of these guys.
Yeah, for me, I would say Grissom was my top pickup. Beatty was 2, Neto's 3, Julian 4, and then the rest of the group from there. Oswald Peraza was just like we talked about with him was a spec pick for future like that. That's really more deep league AL only. So that's where all the money was spent was the guys getting call ups. Joe Musgrove, he's scheduled to rejoin the Padres rotation after the toe fracture in February. He did get a cortisone shot after falling on his shoulder during a fielding play. Not exactly what you want to hear about a guy who's had all sorts of injuries. Factoring all that in, and plus, Joe Musgrove is a notorious first halfer, and we've already lost like a couple of starts from him. Where is Musgrove fitting in for you rest of the season here, Greg?
Oh man, I feel like Musgrove might be a wait and see at this point. I mean, he's obviously. I mean, you have to roster him in every.
He's owned everywhere.
Yeah, he's owned. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like wait and see if he's on waivers. I'm saying wait and see what happens like on your team. Because I mean, the cortisone shot, like the toe fracture didn't bother me at all. Like that, I was still, usually with an injury in the preseason, I usually move guys to the point where I wouldn't draft them anymore. But Musgrove I was still drafting Musgrove even after the toe fracture because I felt like that wasn't really that big of an issue. I thought he would come back from that. And it is like, it's mid-April and he's already coming back. So that's good. That's the good news. I don't know. This cortisone shot in the shoulder, though, that's really concerning. So hopefully it's nothing. Like, I think he's probably fine, but honestly, I don't know at this point with the shoulder. So we'll have to see how his velocity looks, how he looks in his first start back. But yeah, I mean, I still tentatively still like him. I probably tentatively, I'd say probably like bottom of the top 40 starters as of right now. And we'll see.
Yeah, that's where I was thinking. Somewhere in the 35 to 40 range is probably where he slots in, just because like you said, like the guy, it's like the shoulder, and now you're like, oh shit, now is the shoulder hurt? Like, what's gonna happen there? Is there gonna be velocity? Is that gonna linger? I mean, if you got to get a cortisone shot, it's not nothing. You didn't just like fall and bruise your, the outside skin part of your shoulder. Like something happened to get a cortisone shot in your shoulder to go back out and play. So that does worry me. So that, if we knew he was 100% healthy, I think that ranking would probably be a little bit higher. Moving on, Chris Bubik. We talked about him for like 25 minutes last podcast. And of course, he goes on the L at least 2 weeks, maybe more, with a forearm flexor strain. I don't know that it really matters who joins the rotation. It might be Ryan Yarbrough, who's like current long man. Like the rest of the Royals are kind of whatever. I mean, there's not really a replacement there. Where were you at on Bubik, though? Because he looked awful in the start before they announced.
Yeah, no, he's done. I dropped him in most leagues. I mean, I think he's probably done. If not for the year, he's done for a while. Like his velocity was way off. I mean, I think he's finished. I think he's totally finished. I don't know, but I would drop him in most leagues outside of like AL only, or if you have unlimited IL slots, then you don't drop anyone. I mean, so it doesn't really matter, but I think he's probably droppable. In an AL only league, I think I have Yarbrough, so I'd like to see him get in the rotation. It's a good stadium, so he might have like home streamer appeal, Ryan Yarbrough, but he's not worth looking at yet in mixed leagues.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on, Brayan Bello is scheduled to make his return. I think it was supposed to actually happen today. Fastball, the 97-mile fastball, slider, changeup guy. Are you interested in Brayan Bello, and what leagues are you looking at him?
Oh, he's getting crushed right now in the Patriots Day game. I mean, absolutely demolished. He's given up 5 runs in like 1 inning or 2 innings. Yeah, it's bad. I don't have the game on, so I can't tell you how he actually looks, but it looks like he gave up a 3-run homer to Renfroe. So, I don't know. I like Bello though a lot. I think he's super talented, but obviously the first start didn't look good. I probably would try and bench him in most leagues if I could, at least in like maybe 15 team mixed league. Probably I would bench him until I saw a good start, and then in shallower, like 12 team mixed leagues and shallower, you're waiting to see him pitch well before you're picking him up in a shallow league like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally you had him on like the IL, and you kind of like finagle your roster to leave him on the IL until he shows you something. But he is a high upside arm. Like he's a high K, like high strikeout volatility type of arm. So it just depends on kind of what you're looking for your roster. It could go real good, or like it apparently is today, there's going to be some bad days in there as well. Moving on, just wanted to bring it up. Max Scherzer had his start pushed back due to right side and back soreness. Scheduled for his next start to be on Wednesday. Is Scherzer moving down your rankings? I mean, this is kind of the second oblique thing in 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe if I were re-ranking him, I'd probably move him down a little bit, maybe, but he was probably only going to be 150 to 160 inning guy this year anyway. So, I mean, the Mets really need him and Verlander to be healthy like in the second half of the year. So, maybe they're slow rolling him a little bit. Maybe he's like, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound good. Like whenever you hear about a shoulder being an issue, like that doesn't sound good for him. But I mean, he's a vet. Hopefully he's fine. Yeah, we'll see. I don't think like Jose Budo, I think he threw on Sunday. He does not look like a real option. I like McGill and Peterson, but they've already been in the rotation for for the whole season so far. So there's nothing really there that's actionable, I don't think, right now as far as Scherzer goes.
Okay, moving on. Let's talk about some of the bullpens. Brandon Hughes was activated. How are you looking at the Cubs? Just other than Mets, right?
Yeah, I mean, Wisdom looks pretty good from a power perspective. I mean, is this just like because you're a Cubs fan? You just want my opinion about the Cubs?
No, I mean, I asked about the bullpen specifically. I tried to keep it to something that might help somebody.
I thought you meant in general the Cubs look terrible.
We do. They do. They are absolutely just awful. It's an embarrassment.
I didn't realize
of a
you meant
baseball
the
team.
Cubs thing. I didn't realize you meant the pen. I thought you just meant the Cubs. Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, Fulmer, I thought he was okay, but and the Cubs aren't good, so it's like they reacted really fast if they've replaced Fulmer with Boxberger. Like after one blown save on Saturday, it was like, I mean, I was at the game, but I wasn't there for the ninth inning. So I don't know exactly. I know that David Peralta, drove in 2 runs. But I mean, I don't know how Fulmer really looked. But then Fulmer came back on Sunday and threw a scoreless 8th inning. So I don't know. Maybe it's Fulmer Boxberger committee still. I don't know. Maybe Hughes works in there. I don't know. I honestly, in NL only leagues, they should all be rostered. And in shallow leagues, I don't know if I'd roster any of them.
I mean, that's correct.
Yeah, maybe Boxberger right now, just in case, because he got the save on Sunday. So maybe you pick him up in like a shallow league if you're desperate for saves. But that, 2 days from now, I might be saying something different on that.
Yeah, I will say it seemed like they had kind of tabbed Brandon Hughes pre-injury as the closer. So there's just a little bit of possibility there. But again, it's the Cubs. They're awful. They're making terrible decisions anyways. I think in their minds, they'd love to get rid of Fulmer and Boxberger and probably Hughes while they're at it. If they could get rid of anybody in our bullpen currently, if we can trade them for anything. So, anybody on the Cubs roster could be moved at any given point if anybody offers us anything, because we don't have anybody other than our top 4 guys. That's in lineup. That's it. Moving over to the Mets, Ottavino got a save, but then Robertson got his 3rd save of the year. They said they're using some kind of high leverage type of thing. I guess Robertson's worth owning, where he's owned everywhere for the most part. Do you think Ottavino's worth owning in anything more than 15 team deep leagues and only leagues?
No,
like starting to get mixed league relevant.
Oh, I think Ottavino. I think the Mets closer situation is like 80-20 Robertson Ottavino, and 20% saves is like, that's over the course of a season. We're talking about maybe 7 to 9 saves. That's not really worth rostering. I mean, he's on pace to save like maybe at the most like two games for the month of April. That's not really worth rostering in most leagues.
Yeah, that's fair. I'd say what I tend to use guys like that for is if I have a bad pitching matchup on the starter side, I'll throw one of those like second closer types in and just hope I get a save. And if not, I get good ratios and a few Ks. If they're one of the guys that goes a few extra innings, that's even better. But yeah, I'd agree with you. Robertson's worth owning. Ottavino, it's going to be very league dependent, and if it's a day to day, then maybe he has some appeal when Robertson goes a day or 2 in a row. Helsley still has his job. Nothing changed there, but Gallegos did get a save. Gallegos has looked good. Verhagen has looked good. Didn't really want to say anything other than Gallegos looked good. Like Cardinals could start mixing.
I mean, this is like Sagnoff that like. I mean, we say this stuff every preseason. Like, people still draft closers high, but it's like, if Gallegos became the Cardinals closer by this time next week, it wouldn't shock me. I mean, it's like the managers and teams don't have that much, loyalty to these guys. Like, unfortunately, I mean, Helsley was great last year. I mean, I think Helsley still has the job as of right now, but if he were to lose the job, it wouldn't shock me at all. That's why, like, him getting drafted in like the top 50 overall never made any sense. Like, he hasn't been great, Helsley. I mean, he's been good enough to hold the job for right now, but that could change, man.
Yeah, I mean he's walked some people, he's allowed a few hits here and there. The strikeouts are always going to be there, but Gallegos has been like spotless this year, and really like he has such a long track record with St. Louis that I feel like there's just kind of a or I guess Helsley does too, but Gallegos has a good record, whereas Helsley kind of just got it together last year. Like they could potentially go back and forth on those two. I could definitely see that happening if Helsley's walks get out of control or something like that happens. Because again, Gallegos has been very good to start the year. All right, Gray. Last thing, let's just run through some pickups and then we'll get out of here.
Okay. It looks pretty good actually. Speaking of bullpens, Mason Thompson and the Nationals. He looks really pretty good. And Brent Honeywell looks good too. Maybe the Padres finally figured out like Honeywell. I think it's Honeywell Jr. But yeah, maybe the Padres finally figured him out, or maybe he's just finally healthy because he was, injured for a long time. Anyway, on bat pickups and starter pickups, I think Will Myers, if he's available, I feel like Will Myers could be an easy top 15 first baseman if he stays in Cincy all year. Like that park is so good to hit in. I don't know. I've seen people ask in the comments whether or not to pick up Will Myers, and he feels like a no-brainer. Like absolutely, Will Myers should be rostered in every league, I think. Like unless the league is like crazy shallow and you're debating whether or not to drop Jose Abreu, which I mean, by the way, side note, maybe Jose Abreu will stay hitless through next week, and we'll talk about him on next week's podcast. But Jose Abreu, man, you got the Crawford boxes. Is Jose Abreu, is he cooked? What's going on, man? I think he might be cooked. Anyway, pickups. Stone Garrett looks great. I wish the Nationals would actually play him, though. He's not getting played enough to really be he's nowhere near mixed league legitimate. I think even in NL only leagues right now, Stone Garrett is hard to roster because he's just not getting play. They're playing Alex Call in front of him. They're playing Dom Smith. Like they don't know what Dom Smith is. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Then there's also like on arms, there's a Johan Oviedo, the Pirates guy. He looked really good on Friday. I know Dan Pants wrote him up in the Saturday roundup. That's worth checking out on Razzball. He looked really good though on Friday. I don't know. I'm watching him. He may be a guy we're talking about next week for a lot longer. Like he looked great. So we'll see. Ryan Nelson looked good. People keep asking about Brandon Pfaadt. I mean, I think he's coming up at some point, but I don't know. Gavin Stone's another guy who I think is coming up at some point soon. I don't know when. I don't know. Who else? You got anyone?
I mean, Zach Greinke, for what it's worth.
Also, like Matt Mervis, like what happened to him? He should get called. Like at the Cubs game, I missed a lot of the Cubs game on Saturday, but I did get to see Eric Hosmer ground into a double play. So there was that.
That's a regular occurrence, Gray. I mean, that's grounding into double plays is like what the Cubs middle of the order is built to do right now is ground into double plays. Like that's what they're built for. It's amazing. I don't know. Matt Mervis should have been starting opening day, and they went out and signed like every shitty first baseman and corner outfielder that was available. And so we just blocked him from coming up completely. I would go pick him up because I think at some point they're going to need to bring him up just for the fan base sake, because the product on the field is so bad. Like we get 1 through 4, and then it's like the rest of the game until we get back to 1 through 4. Only on the offensive side. It's just terrible.
Wisdom, Patrick Wisdom does look good though.
Oh yeah, he does. He's actually been a very nice surprise. I kind of wrote him off. Like I kind of didn't even think he was going to do anything, but he does look good. From a pickups standpoint, I think Victor Robles, who I don't know if we talked about him yet, but like maybe he's finally starting to figure it out at the major league level at age, I don't know, 26. He's still not even 26 yet. That's absolutely crazy to me. He's hitting at the bottom of the lineup, but if you're just looking for an outfielder and some speed, he is pretty much playing every day because he plays center for them. Kevin Kiermaier is doing his regular Kevin Kiermaier thing / Michael A. Taylor doing his Michael A. Taylor thing. So like combine them and you get the same player basically for about the same amount of time. Andrew McCutcheon's another one. Like these are just like names that fill in outfield spots if you're hurting right now. Gio Urshela at third base has been hitting well and getting a little bit more playing time. Thank goodness. So that's another interesting one. He's actually starting to move up the lineup a little bit at times. So that's one that could become interesting if he gets to hit. If they finally realize Anthony Rendon just needs to sit on the bench and yell at fans.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
All right. So if you have any specific questions, as always, come into the comment section on Razball or YouTube or hit us up on Twitter. I am at RazBeaton. Gray is at Razball. You can watch us on youtube.com/RazballFantasy. Subscribe, rate, and review. That all helps. Appreciate all of that. Until next week, Gray, have a good one.
Late.